Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Gilles Cocguen and I will moderate today's session on investing in early stage technologies. I'm the head of EuroQuity at Bpifrance and the mission of my team is to support key organizations such as EIC to connect entrepreneurs, innovative and tech companies to investors, corporates and business support organizations in Europe and in Africa. Deep tech technologies and deep tech companies are very trendy, but it's not only a trend. It's something huge for our future. It's something that will have an impact on our today's life and for European citizens and beyond. So I'm very excited to welcome today our 4 panelists. We will have 2 very experienced and successful investors and also 2 highly talented entrepreneurs. So on the investment side, we have Almudena Trigo, who is a partner at BeAble Capital for 6 years now, a Spanish venture capital fund, where she has been working for nearly 10 years. We have also Cesare Maifredi, who has been working at 360 Capital for now 11 years, a VC fund of which is currently the general partner. On the entrepreneur side, Luca D'Alessandro co-founded Phononic Vibes back in 2017. Phononic Vibes is an Italian startup that introduces a new patented technology with unprecedented performances in vibration and noise control and isolation with a circular economy approach. We have also Ilai Schwartz, who is the co-founder and CTO of NVision imaging technologies for now 5 years, a German startup which leverages new advances in quantum physics to fundamentally change molecular analysis and medical imaging. So how this panel will work? First, as you can see, we are 2 here in Brussels, and we will have 3 others that will participate remotely. We will kick off first with a 30 minutes discussion, followed by a 10 minutes Q&A session. So the first question will be for investors. So first for you, I would like to know why you are investing in deep tech technologies, in deep tech companies, and what kind of companies you are looking for.
Okay, thank you, Gilles, for this invitation. My name, as Gilles mentioned, is Almudena Trigo, founding partner at BeAble Capital. I'm really happy to be here today discussing about this topic because this topic is essential for Europe, improving the investment in early stages companies, okay, is, well, a very important point in order to achieve success, the success agenda that the European Commission want to do, okay? So let me start talking about BeAble Capital. We are a management company based in Madrid, Spain. We have an active fund of 35 million euros. The focus of this fund is science equity. This is a science equity fund. We invest in industrial science-based companies in nanotechnology, advanced material, photonic, micro and nanoelectronics, and industrial biotech. And why is, in my opinion, it's so important to discuss today about science equity? Because science equity is one of the keys to unlock the investment in early stages, okay? Let me explain it, okay? Initially, when we talk about deep tech, the concept of deep tech includes digital technologies, I mean artificial intelligence, machine learning, cybersecurity, data mining, etc. And also industrial science-based technologies, deep science, I mean, well, nanotechnology, advanced material, photonics, micro and nanoelectronics, industrial biotech. But now, the reality is that we talk about deep tech, we are thinking about digital technologies, okay? If we check, for example, the ranking of the best deep tech companies, okay, for sure more than 90% of them are digital technologies. So for example, if you check the portfolio of the deep tech venture capitals in Europe, okay, for sure. More than 90% of the investees are digital tech companies. So what's happened with the other subcategory, with industrial science-based companies? More if we take into account that these type of companies plays a very important role to tackle the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. The lack of attendance of these type of companies, the industrial science-based companies, is a very important point. More taking into account the complexity in the development of this company in the pre-seed and seed stages. So for this reason, it's very important to talk about a new asset class inside the private capital ecosystem, okay? And this asset class has to be the ones that have the financial vehicles with the capability and understanding to support the industrial science-based companies. It's the only way to push this type of early stage investment. So I hope...
Thanks, Almudena. I will ask the same question for Cesare now. So, Cesare, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Great. So could you just give us, an insight of your activities and explain us why are you investing in deep tech companies and what kind of companies are you looking for?
Yeah. Thank you for this question. We at 360, we have been in business, in the VC business, since more than 20 years now. So it's a very long history on our side, and we started from digital actually, right? So between the early 2000 and 2012, we were only focused on digital. But then back then, it was about 2012, 2013, we started to look at new, say, avenues of growth and opportunities in other sectors. And we early identified deep tech back then, and again, it was almost 10 years ago, probably 8 years ago, as one of those possible opportunities that were invested in the VC ecosystem, not only in Europe, but I would say back then generally in the world, right? So I think that we were an early mover in the field. We set up a dedicated robotics and artificial intelligence fund in 2014. We started to invest in 2015 out of that fund, and since then we made deep tech one of our main areas of focus, one of our three, I would say, key pillars of our investment strategy. So we built a portfolio of roughly 30 companies, mainly in robotics and artificial intelligence, but more recently we also expanded since 2019 to other, let's say, hard technologies. And this is the way we want to go and move in the future, because we do think that on the digital side there are still, and software side in general, there are still nice opportunities, but valuations are very high, while we feel that in deep tech ecosystem valuations are more reasonable, there is less competition, and at the same time new technologies are coming into the market and are very promising and might really change the world in one sense. So for all those reasons, so we do believe in this asset class, in investing in deep tech, and we plan to do it in the future.
Thanks, Cesare. On the entrepreneur side now, I would like to hear from them. First, if they got funded and how was their journey. So I will ask first to Luca to answer to these questions. Luca, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. So I'm Luca, co-founder and CEO of Phononic Vibes. So we work on advanced materials for noise and vibration isolation. We are a deep tech. We are a spin-off company of Politecnico of Milano University. And yes, we got funded thanks to Poly360 Fund, actually. So Cesare here is one of our investors, actually the first investor. And we got funded with a seed round and a post-seed round, and totally we raised 2.8 million. So far, so good. Now, of course, we are shooting for Series A in order to take our technology to the next level and therefore to production, basically.
And how was your journey? Was it difficult to raise funds?
Actually, I mean, it was quite straightforward, I would say, thanks to the fact that in Italy at this moment, of course, we are based in Italy. In Italy at this moment, there is a hotspot for new VCs based on deep tech. So, for example, when we got our first investment, Cesare and his team on 360 just raised the fund that was specifically for technology transfer. So it was quite straightforward at that moment. I was finishing PhD with the other co-founder, and it was quite straightforward, the discussion. So the first one was quite straightforward. The second one was more competitive, since, of course, we had to to go to several doors, and both at Italian level and international level. But at the end of the day, we got another fund, which is named Eureka Venture Fund 1, that was also devoted to technology transfer investing, and is also an Italian investor. So first one, seed round, straightforward. The second one was more difficult to get. And of course, this Series A is even more difficult, but we hope we will succeed, let's say.
Thanks for that. Ilai, the floor is yours. Same questions. Did you get funded, and how was your journey?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and of course for inviting me to this event. Just a bit of background. So I'm Gilles from the city of NVision. We are a company in the healthcare, leveraging quantum technologies to really fundamentally change how medical imaging is done. Specifically, we're turning MRI from just an anatomical modality to a metabolic modality. So it improves the amount of information you have regarding cancer significantly. For prostate cancer, for breast cancer, you can see, for example, treatment assessment. You can see whether the treatment is working or not in a matter of 1 week instead of 4 months. We're now at the stage where we prove that the science works, and we're now in the tech transfer stage with contractor manufacturing, really going from the prototype phase to manufacturing. We have raised funding through seed and Series A, about 17 million euros, and an additional 8 million euros or so in public funding, both on the federal level and the EU level. And as you said, for deep tech companies, it's a much harder journey, I would say, than both, of course, so digital, and even more than for hardware companies, even more than software-based deep tech. For example, I would say software that does AI, which of course is deep tech, can definitely be easier to raise than actual hardware, such as in robotics or in our case in imaging. For the seed round, especially when we were more with the proof of concept, but without yet a fully functional prototype, it was definitely a tough journey getting the funding in Europe, which is why we flew across the pond and raised the funding. Our lead investor was from the US, from Palo Alto, so Playgon Global, for a leading deep tech and hardware investor. But after that, we actually got also European VCs, such as, a few of them, but B2V, I would say the main one, who were excellent investors and invest in deep tech, got them interested and on board, and that was definitely something which helped us a lot also with the network, and being based in Germany is of course important as well. But we saw it again in the Series A that I would say there's currently quite a bit more appetite for risk outside of the EU. And again, for lead investors in Series A, they were from the US and from Israel, with again other investors from the EU joining as followers. I would say definitely a couple of things that we learned from the journey, and from anyone that wants to start the journey and give us advice. One is don't be afraid to think globally. There are definitely VCs out there that have an appetite for risk, and you have to find them. It can be a tough journey, but when you find a good fit, it can be fantastic. And the other thing is that there is a lot. I mean, the EU wants to push forward deep tech that has an impact on people's lives. And there are a lot of different options for funding vehicles, which are not only VC, which can be leveraged. I mean, for us, some of the EU funding through the Horizon 2020 and some federal funding from the BMBF in Germany was absolutely crucial to hit our milestones. So definitely encourage new startups to look also at this opportunity.
Thanks, Ilai. Many thanks for you and all the panelists for sharing your own experiences. What I would like to have now is coming from your experience to extrapolate and to have a global approach regarding some issues that deep tech companies are facing. And probably the first question I would like to ask you is to let us understand if there is, I would say, something different regarding the classical investment strategy for early stage companies, meaning a problem to solve, a huge market, a great team, a clear strategy, exit vision. So I would like to know first if for tech companies, these characteristics are applying the same, or is it slightly different? So first question to you.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, I think that the requirements that you have mentioned are really important for sure. But taking into account the investment in industrial science-based companies, the science equity, okay, I think that we have to take into account other requirements and also to clarify some of them. For example, team. Great team is very important, but usually science-based science equity funds has to work with the company in order to complete that team or to set up, to create sometimes the team. It depends on the stage of development. For example, another important point is to have a real technology transfer. Okay, it's very important for science-based companies to be totally independent from the university and the research center. So this is a very important point. And for example, another one is taking into account the technology readiness level of the company. Okay, I think this type of funds, the science equity funds, has to go deeper in the technological validation in order to have a clear view about the viability, okay, of the company. So I think that we have to take another considerations.
Thank you, Cesare.
Yeah, I mean, if I can make an analogy, I think I can say that it's a different recipe, but with the same ingredients. So those 4 factors that you mentioned are always important. And are important also for deep tech companies, maybe with a slightly different, say, twist. In our case, we don't do biotech, and we do deep tech, but we want to invest in companies that have a clear path to market with a clear solution that can be eventually sold to the market. So I think that the execution capabilities are still very important, because it's not just advancing the research and then selling the company for the value that the company has created just on the research side. We want to see companies that bring products to markets. And in this sense, the execution capabilities, particularly in the second phase of the life of those companies, it's really very, very important. So in our experience, the most successful companies were companies where the founders were able to transition from a more technical background to a more, let's say, managerial and commercial skills and skill set. So again, I think that for us, this is really a key part of the investment thesis anyway.
Thanks. Luca, what are your feelings regarding this question? And I would say the key ingredients and components, investors are looking for before deciding to enter, to jump, and to invest in a company.
Yeah, sure. So definitely the fact that we are an industrial science-based company based on materials. So during this journey, now it's 3.5 years that we are running this company. So during this journey, I I felt, I saw two possible ways. So one way is like the so-called zero revenue company, so developing technology and keeping all the IP inside with proof of concept that are maybe not paid and not entering all the discussions about what is happening to IP, because normally there is background and foreground division, and it's always quite complex to discuss with the partner. So let's say a zero revenue company. But this one, it's more, it needs, as the colleague was saying, maybe more, it's more difficult to raise fund for that. Instead, we choose the second path that is making revenues, okay? So making revenues is like having a, discuss with the devil, because, to make revenue, to have money from the very beginning, it means to go on the market, it means to ask for money, and therefore to the team that is originally a technology development team should also face the requests of the market that are not always straightforward connected to the technology development. This may lead to defocus, but may also lead to greater value. So our decision to go on the second path, so to have revenues, so far has turned quite good in our experience, but it was very tough to be always focused, and on that, VCs and board members can always help. But definitely, I think that, in my opinion, it's a good way to make revenues since not the very beginning, but as soon as the company has a proof of concept, to test on the market and to go quicker. And in this way, the company may be more interesting for early investment for VCs. But I know that this is a kind of two-way path, so this is how we choose to do.
Okay, so traction is key for you. Clear.
Yes.
Ilai, on your side.
Yeah, it's an interesting question for sure. I think one thing which we found out is very important also, and also then from the investor side during fundraising, is the capabilities of the team in also being able to move out from just the research and development and actually get a broad team which includes also being able to lead the commercial aspects, operational aspects, which come, of course, in most deep tech ventures. That's one thing. The other part on the team, which is really important, the technology, of course, right, in deep tech, especially science-based deep tech companies is key. But we, for example, we did a technological pivot, which that really, let the company jump forward by an order of magnitude. And having then the decision just based on the initial technology doesn't really capture the ability of the team and the company to pivot and actually build a new technology almost from scratch. So I would say, and this is really something that you see, especially in the early rounds, that also the kind of the research capabilities or R&D capabilities of the founding team after the seed also of the existing R&D team in the company is really important. Can they actually develop not only what they came with from university, but will they be able to develop that technology or other technologies if needed and take it all the way to market? That's definitely, yeah.
No, let's go, Ilai, let's go. Continue.
Okay, thank you. The other point I would like to raise is that it's very difficult for investors to be, to go into the weeds, right, of the research. And I think for anyone doing a deep tech startup, it's something that they should keep in mind, that any type of risk which requires research, it can be, let's say, a very orange flag, right? I wouldn't say a red flag, but investors a lot of times cannot actually, because they cannot go into the technical details fully, they cannot assess whether it's a big risk or a small risk. And that's pretty key. So I think that it's really important, especially as going towards the round A, to make sure that to minimize the technical risk and the ones that are still left, have it in a way which is also clear to non-experts in the field how these will be solved, and that these are not risks that require a breakthrough or an undefined amount of time, but it's something that there's a clear roadmap for, and it's clear how they will be addressed in the following.
Thank you, Ilai. I have another question. You discussed already that point regarding, I would say, the edge share of the deep tech startups. Often, deep tech companies are starting with scientists with no business experience. So I would like to know, and I would like to have the point of view of investors on one side and the entrepreneurs. How did you manage to develop, the activity and the human resources inside deep tech companies? First.
Yeah, Gilles, I think this is a very important point. Usually the origin of these industrial science-based companies is the science-based approach, the scientific excellence, but usually these two things are the death of these companies, because when you have a company, you have a business approach. Okay, so it's very important for these companies to balance the team, okay, to include in the team business person, okay, and to understand that the science, the technology is a tool to get a goal, but it's not the goal, okay? And I think it's a very important point for this type of companies, okay?
Thank you. Cesare, on your side. And I will ask all the panelists to have, I would say, short answers, if possible.
Yeah, no, I do think that, again, and going back to my previous answer, at some point you need to have a full-fledged team, right, with all the competencies inside. And for sure, adding those more managerial and commercial competencies is difficult, it's hard, because you don't have them at the beginning. There are several strategies to do it. My tendency is to try to really see whether the founding team has this capability itself, because adding people is always a risk, is always difficult, and therefore not always successful.
Thank you. Luca, how did you manage in your company?
Yes, I would say that we had within the scientific funding team, we had to open ourselves to the market and to be more far from the technology point of view. This was key and is still key. And of course, I mean, after making this journey at the beginning, after the early stage, before the Series A or together with the Series A, then is the moment to add some commercial people, when also the product and the technology, thanks to the funding team and the early employees, is possible to be expressed in an easy way, also to not scientific backgrounds.
Ilai?
In our case, the funding team already had quite a bit of business experience, so it might be somewhat different. I was working for several other high-tech companies, and was for several years at McKinsey, the management consulting firm. And my co-founder, s.r.l, is also who's a physician, so he has the medical background, but more than that, he also has the business background, being 4 years at McKinsey and being an executive in a couple of startups before joining NVision.
Great. Last question regarding, I would say, the particular path to access the market for the deep tech companies. And I would like to understand on the investor's point of view and the company's point of view, how you are managing the expectations, meaning you are an investor, you invested in companies, they will take the time to access the market, and we discussed that already. So how you are managing your own expectation? And we'd like to have the point of view afterwards of the entrepreneurs, of course. Almudena.
Yeah, I think it's very important to manage the expectation, and for this reason it's very important to create different asset class that understand the type of investment that you are doing. The type of development of industrial science-based companies is different, and it's important to understand it, and also, for example, to have KPIs that can make a good monitoring of the investment. For example, when you are investing in pharma, it's a long way, a long path, but you have a clear definition about you have different phases, you have to overcome this phase, and everything is completely defined. In industrial science-based companies, this is difficult to do, and it's very important for that reason to have science equity and a specific asset class that can do that, because in other way, the expectations are a problem, okay, for the investors.
Many thanks. Cesare?
Yeah, in our case, we decided to split our assets in seed dedicated funds and around, say, A and B dedicated funds. So obviously on the seed funds, we are willing to wait more, and we have more patience, and we take, let's say, more time. While on the other funds, I think it's still important to see some developments, right? Some early successes of those companies, and at least in our experience, the best performing companies are also the ones that can deliver results fairly fast. In some cases, it doesn't mean the full product, but at least show progress, find the interest of other investors, which can come in subsequent rounds at higher valuations. So, I think there is a way also for deep tech companies to show momentum and show interest, and I think a good CEO has to focus on that as well.
Okay, thank you. Luca?
Yes, I think that from our perspective, revenues were important, because when you get paid, it's a good moment. Of course, this should be balanced with the technology development, the IP protection, and therefore, in discussions with our board, generally speaking, we have always the revenue as a metric for traction, but also IP contracts for development that maybe are bigger in terms of time span. So I would say it's a balance, but revenues definitely play an important role.
Thank you. Ilai?
I definitely agree. I think, the internal KPIs or technical KPIs, but I think the important thing really to demonstrate are things that are easy to understand and show more maturity of the product and market validation. So from really demonstrations at user sites, of course, pre-orders or revenue, things which are tangible, and it's clear that one doesn't need to trust, right, that the science is going well, but can actually see that the market accepts the technology and this is going forward and maturing quickly.
Thank you very much. I would like to conclude this first part of the session before the Q&A session, ask each panelist in 1 minute to say, I would say, the tip, the key recommendation for deep tech companies that are willing to raise capital in the short term. Please.
Okay, I think that the most important point is to define the different type of investment that you have, okay, and define the specific asset class, the specific vehicle that can do that in a good way for the company and also for the investor. And for that reason, I think that science equity is so important, okay?
Thank you. Cesare?
I think that for early stage companies, and particularly for the ones that are spin-offs of universities or research centers, I think that working on your story, I think it's the most important thing, because I see often good ideas, good researchers that come to us with a very poor story, right? So because they don't understand it, they think that the research itself is more important than the story. But I think that crafting a good story is always important when you talk to investors. So if the goal is raising money, you need to focus on it as well.
Thank you. Luca?
Yeah, for me, would be first, protect the idea, so file IP or get the IP. Second, get a first market interest that could be a partnership, a contract, a successful pilot, and then go to investors connected to universities, your own university if they are, or university that can understand those metrics.
Thank you. Ilai?
I agree. I think going trying to aim for a demonstration, proof of concept is key, again, to make sure that this is something that investors will be able to understand, even deep tech investors. And then I would really suggest also the options, the public funding or non-dilutive options, which are available in the EU and the federal states, which can be, of course, a huge help at the beginning. And then going for VCs or early investors, could also be angel investors. I think it's important, though, to find ones also as soon as possible with deep pockets, right? That ones that can also help finance and fund further on.
Thank you so much for your insights. So now it's time for the Q&A session. So in the room, you can raise your hand and you will have a mic. And for those that are attending the session remotely, you can use your computer to write your question. So the first question is coming from Spomenko Todorovic. Is there a market for early stage startups? So the question is very broad. So which of you two investors want to take the question? Almudena.
Well, I know it's a broad question. I know. On my side, I think that it's very important to invest in this type of companies because it's the future of Europe. I think that it's one of the main points that we have to work because I think that public funding is there and also scale-up investors, private investors are there. But I think that the first stages, okay, are the ones that we have to solve the problems that we are facing. I think that the main problem is in the private sector, okay, inside the private capital, okay. But this is a great moment right now because private capitals are looking in science in order to as a deal flow, okay. So I think that this is the moment, and in my opinion, private capital is the key point to work.
Thank you. Another question coming from Anna Herzog. We are an hardware startup which has no prototype at the moment. It seems that a proof of concept is not enough for most investors. What is your experience? How is it possible to find investors without a prototype? We can ask Cesare and we can ask an entrepreneur also. I do not know, Luca, if you want to answer, or Ilai, but Cesare first and then an entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there are several VC funds which work on technology transfer and which also invest in companies with no prototype. Of course, any entrepreneur has to show something, and we cannot invest just on nice ideas. So some very early, let's say, signs of possible success has to be shown. But having a prototype, I think, is not a total, a must for some investors. So I think it is possible, although obviously not super simple.
If I can,
yeah, sure.
I think that's the key point. Okay, I think that if you have no sales, it's really difficult to raise money. Okay, because in the usual venture capital ecosystem, they are looking for sales. When someone told you about, I can invest in pre-sales stages. Okay, they need some sales. Okay, because to validate a technological company is really difficult if you don't have that, okay? You have to have a deep knowledge about the technology if you don't have sales in order to understand the potential and the traction and to validate the technology. For that reason, it's very important to push the financial vehicles that can invest in these pre-seed stages, in these pre-sales, real pre-sales stages, okay?
Thank you. Ilai or Luca, do you want to comment on that?
I can comment. We raised our seed funding without a prototype. In that way, it's a definitely a relevant question. I think the most important thing there, as was already said, there are other vehicles such as public funding for these early stages. But if you really want to go for a VC fund, if you want to raise a significant amount, you need to find investors who are passionate about the technology and are interested enough to go deep and then really, take the risk with you of the development phase. So there are definitely such investors, but you have to find the ones which are passionate about this specific technology.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I can also quickly comment, or
yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So we close. I would say network can play a relevant role. So you can probably find some very well-known advisor within that field that can, let's say, place his name for the prototype that will be developed, or you can find some investors that have within the team someone that is very, very expert on that market that can understand why the prototype is not ready yet and that you can make it. That's it.
Thank you. Another question that we can share, I think, between all of you. Which are the most showstopper factors identified from investor due diligence in deep tech?
I think, well, in the discussion, the previous discussion, we have been talking about that. I think that you have to take into account that the usual requirement of a venture capital are going to look for that, okay? Good team, great market, and this kind of thing. But also, I think that if you are in a pre-seed state moment, okay, I think that to have a balanced team is very important. To have a very good IP, intellectual property, is very important, and to make a real technology transfer is also essential.
Other comments coming from the panelists? No? The answer was enough? Okay, great. A question for Photonic Vibes. Photonic Vibes was also awarded from Climate Kick at the very beginning. How important was that in view of synergies with European Institute for Innovation and Technology?
Yes, yes, we were awarded from Climate Kick and also Horizon 2020, the first phase. So I think that this is also that this is a metric. So one of the metrics that a deep tech startup should have in order to be evaluated is also the capability to be successful in getting grants at EU level. Because it's very, very competitive. And of course, all the scientists are applying to that. So in that sense, I mean, it was a very useful metric for us. And of course, I mean, we had to work on our story and on our proposal to make it. I mean, we were not successful the first, not the second, but the third, yes. And now we are expanding our applications within the EU ecosystem that is very well structured for I mean, going close to the technology development. So, but I'm sure that there are other deep moments about that. So.
Thank you, Luca. I will take a last question. So the last question will be, and I think you can answer all of you, in early stage, how relevant is to compensate funding team lack of expertise with relevant advisors, coming from Thomas?
Okay, I think that in my experience, okay, it's important to have a full team, a full dedicated team, okay? I think that advisors are important, okay? But I think that the capabilities and knowledge to go to the market and to have success is important to have all this knowledge inside the company in a full-time way, at least in my experience, okay?
Okay, Cesare?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I think that advisors are good and can provide some value, particularly in terms of network and some, you know, strategic thinking and positioning. But what is the team, at the end, is the team that makes things happen, right? So I'm really focused on building a strong team rather than focusing too much in adding advisors,
okay,
particularly at the beginning.
And on the entrepreneur side, did you receive some support coming from advisors, especially at the beginning, Luca?
Yes, we did. While we were not invested yet, let's say from VCs, we had a very close relationship with an ex-McKinsey mentor that helped us a lot to shape our idea, our technology into something that was sellable to to the market. So at the very beginning, I think it's important to work closely with someone that has a deep market and also consulting point of view.
Ilai?
That can help shaping. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Ilai, on your side?
Yeah, we had also at the beginning business consultant or advisor, which was great for several areas where we had less experience in, for example, IP negotiations and agreements with different universities. So I think at the beginning that's very helpful. Later on, I think advisors mostly help for areas which are not the core of the company, but are needed for taking the next steps. So in our case, for example, the regulatory side and so forth.
Thank you all. So I will close now the session, and thanks again to all the panelists, Almudena, Cesare, Luca, and Ilai, and a special thanks also to Marco Giorgioni, head of sector at ESME, for building that session. Have a good day, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.